My name is Phil Manzanera, and I'm really, really happy to have been talking to Notes from an Artist.
But let's officially welcome Phil to the show, David. We're taping, so don't worry, Phil. He is a recording artist. He's a performing artist. He's a producer. He's a composer. He's a band leader. He's a band member. He's a musical director. He's a conceptualist. He's good at organizing things. And in his spare time, he was a guitarist for one of the most influential, groundbreaking, and quite fashionable music collectives in the history of pop music, Roxy Music. Nice work if you can get it.
Hey, well, it's exactly why I wrote this memoir, was to try and make sense of what the hell happened, how I'm here, obviously 52 years later since I started with Roxy, and obviously 500 years where my family came from.
Right. So, yes.
There's trying to make sense of what this is. A lot of people, when they get to my age, they sort of, what's this all about? How did I get here? What the hell? Who are those people? My cousins, and obviously you want to tell your grandchildren, your children, your grandchildren. And, like a lot of people, you think, oh, when my parents were alive, I wish I'd asked them more questions about what happened, where we came from, what happened back then. Of course, I didn't, like a lot of people. So this is an attempt also for my children, grandchildren, cousins, to work out for ourselves a bit of what happened,
Right. Well, the title of the book is, and let's see if I can pronounce this. I went on YouTube to learn how to pronounce Revolution.
Correct.
Well or is done. It Revolution?
Revolution.
To Roxy. That's the easy part.
Thing.
You like that, David? Did I distinguish? Now, if you go in the West Village, David, and you say Revolution, a little bit means something different.
I would think so.
But wonderful book out now on Away with Media. This book, Phil, reads like an adventure film screenplay. I mean, if you took this to Hollywood, they turn it down. They say this could never happen to one person. It's Phil Manzanera and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Phil from Cuba with Love. This is a James Bond book.
Great. Well, it has all those elements in it, and trying to work out. It's just a series of my stories that I would tell when I did interviews, and then eventually some guy said, why don't you put in a book?
Well, reflecting on your playing, it was very interesting. David and I are bass players, and we did study formally. David, you went to Berkeley, and I went to a place called the University of Miami, which is a lot warmer than Berkeley. A lot sexier, I'll have to say. But that's another story.
Boston was kind of cool.
Boston was kind of cool. But you made a conscious effort not to play too technically. And
exactly.
That's pretty daring, given at that time, prog rock and jazz rock were exploding. So, and those players had chops, but you found a way to distinguish yourself.
Well, quite frankly, I realized, when I was sort of came to England and I started learning, and kids at school would teach me how to play stuff, bits and pieces. And at that time, the big thing was like copying someone like, for instance, Hendrix or Cream. You'd slow the vinyl down and try and hear what you could. So I would do that. And people would come up and say, you're playing it wrong all the time. So, after a few years of that, I thought, I'm going to make a virtue out of this. I'm going to just, and luckily, it meant that I created my own sort of combination style by not being through my inadequacies. And I always say that the whole Roxy sound, which our unique sound, whether it's Eno, me, Andy Mackay, and Brian Ferry, is the summation of all our inadequacies. The fact that we weren't technically brilliant, but the little bits that we all added together created a special musical world for this guy with a weird voice to inhabit, Brian Ferry. So that whole idea of the musical context was very much in my mind. But the thing about technique was that I decided when I was 16 or 17, okay, I didn't want to just play scales. I wanted to spread out learning and playing the guitar for the whole of my life. So I wanted to do it gradually. Now, you may say that I'm just a lazy MF, whatever, I couldn't be asked to do that. And there's probably an element of truth in that. But when I discovered that I really liked sound textures more than a flurry of notes, I thought, this is the area I'm going down. And of course, once I left school and everything, and I eventually got into Roxy, I was very good friends with Eno. So, we both liked textural stuff. So with the equipment that was available at the time, we went on an adventure of creating soundscapes, if you like. Yep. And so it took one away, from technical stuff, but also it took you away from just regurgitating blues inflected stuff. And obviously jazz was not going to work in Roxy. And also we had a producer who had worked with George Martin and the Beatles. So I was instructed in the Abbey Road School of Beatles type production of part playing, if you like, and making each little part be worth its weight, and have its place, and not necessarily get in the way and serve the song. Once you're dealing with songs, with singers and things like that, you have a different thing. It's different from free from jazz or something, where you're having musical conversations with people and you're heading off into unknown territories, which I love as well. I was never able to do that with Roxy.
Right.
And actually, we are doing that now. Me, Andy Mackay, and Paul Thompson from Roxy. We did a gig a few weeks ago, and it's called Avant Rock. I call it Avant Rock. And the reason I call it Avant Rock is because that was the ad that I answered in the Melody Maker to join the band. It said guitarist wanted for Avant Rock group. And when I saw that recently, I thought, hang on, that was the mission statement. I don't think we ended up doing that. Let's go back and try that. So we're actually trying that now. So
David and I enjoyed the AM/PM record.
And that is the beginning of our Avant Rock.
Okay. And it's interesting because you're taking a compositional approach to the instrument. And of course, technology is coming to the forefront. You had the VCS3 and I think the Revox tape machines.
Yeah.
So, and it was very interesting to learn that you work remotely. You would, at the sessions, you would work out the parts at home and then present them with 4 or 5 different ideas. Very different from the way things are done in studios.
Well,
then anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing was that nobody in the band could write a proper song. It wasn't like, you look at the film of Let It Be and you see McCartney riding the long winding road. And he says, oh, I've written this new song, the long and winding road. and you think, Jesus, that guy is just like a genius. He's a proper songwriter. The whole tradition of songwriters, they write a melody and they sing it in some words and they go along. We couldn't do that at all. None of us. None. I think maybe once out of 8 albums, someone came with a song with a top line. It was all, here's 3 chords. Just play whatever you want. Let's see what happens. And then we'll give it to the singer, and he's got to go away and try and come up with the top line or some words for it. And it was so, because that's the only way it could be done. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it was terrible. So you wouldn't know till the last moment, and then you had to go on tour. So you're stuck with it, whatever it was. And sometimes we would cheer, say, take the track, Love is the Drug.
Right.
Did all the music, every part of it, gave it to Brian, said, right, off you go. And he came back and had no idea what it was about, called Love is the Drug, nothing to do with that. And then he came in and said, right, off you go into the singing area. He went in. And he sang it, and we all just went, oh my God, thank you, well done, it's a hit. Which is
one of the stories I'd love for you to tell our listeners is the one about when you, Roger, and David were in, where was it, Colombia? And
Roger Daltrey. No, I thought Roger Waters, really? No. No. There's things I didn't put in the book, by the way. Okay, so it's 1992 or something, and imagine that in the UK, there's still a bunch of numpty musicians who are just like, someone says, right, let's go party over there. We all go, and it's for free, and you're going to have a great time. Yeah, okay, let's do it. So this Colombian bass player, friend of ours, Chucho Machan, who had been in the Eurythmics and
fabulous player, yeah.
Great guy, said, right, I've had this request that would you come to Cali, Colombia, and do a free concert for the World Environmental Convention or something. They'll pay for all first-class airfares, all the hotels, everything we pay for. And it'll be the first time that any Who songs or Pink Floyd songs are played in South America. So I say, well, yeah, that's fantastic. I want to be part of this. And also, I'm half Colombian, and one of my cousins can fly the plane because he's the captain and of Avianca. And so, and the manager of Pink Floyd, Steve O'Rourke, said, right, okay, let's go. And so we rehearse in London, and then we get on the plane, and we're having a great time, and and we get there. My cousin flies us to Cali, and we get to Cali, and what was it? What were we thinking? This is the height of the cartel wars between Escobar and the Cali cartel. They were killing each other, and like drugs everywhere, and nobody, I don't remember anybody mentioning anything about that. I think my mother, who was still alive at the time, saying, don't ever go back to Colombia, you'll be kidnapped and all this kind of thing. And thinking about it, they could have kidnapped David Gilmour or Roger Daltrey and made a packet out of it. But anyway, we get there, and the next morning we wake up, and on the front page of the Cali newspaper, it says, don't go to the stadium, to the concert. It's a money laundering exercise for the cartel. So Steve O'Rourke, the manager, said, where's Lucho's room? Chucho's room, sorry. They're banging on the door. I'm following Steve, and he gets him up against the wall. You're a fantastic bass player, but don't ever organize a concert before again. Like, what the hell are we going to do? And so what I have discovered in the last few months, because I went back to Colombia to give a talk, because the Spanish version came out in Cartagena, and the main editor of the El Tiempo said, no, shall I tell you the real story? And of course, I would have put this in the book, but I didn't. The real story is that the Cali Cartel owned the football team who played in that stadium. And they hadn't realized when they agreed for this concert to happen that all the punters would be on the grass, on the turf, and they'd spoil the pitch. So they decided to try and stop it by putting out that it was a money laundering exercise. It's like a double bluff. You could not make it up. So anyway, we did the concert to about 100 people. And there's guys with machine guns, all, you know, like protecting everybody. You can see some of it on YouTube.
Okay.
But so then the next day, in theory, we're all going to stay for like a week and have a holiday and all that kind of thing. But we leave the hotel and I go to the airport and I'm chased by the concierge of the hotel for not having paid my bill. And I said, well, he gets to the airport and he's like accosting me. I said, look, mate, it was meant to be all expenses paid. So what am I, I didn't pay for breakfast or something? So my cousin, who's the captain, gets him and says, look, these guys are incredibly famous. What the dickens do you think you're doing? Not in Spanish, dickens. You know. What do you do? Pendejo que estás haciendo? Get out of here. Leave these guys alone. You know, so we get on the plane and leave. And I go to my uncle's house in Bogota, and that's another story in there that gets overwhelming for me. There's so many cousins. You know, I have 50 cousins. And Gilmore and Roger Dolce, supposedly they're staying for weeks or something. And I suddenly say, I'm leaving straight away. So I go to the airport, I go to the first class compartment, and there they are. I said, what are you guys doing? So we gotta get the hell out of here. You know, this is too dangerous, this place. And they suddenly woke up, you know. And so, but, you know, a bomb went off in the hotel where they were staying the next day. Stuff like that. They could have been killed. You know, we talk about, I was talking to David about it a couple of weeks ago. He said, what were we thinking of? You know, and Polly's wife said, my God, you took me on that thing. We just started going out then, and like the most dangerous place in the world. Yeah.
One of your colleagues, Phil, is a friend of ours. He sends his regards from Brooklyn, New York. He's one of 16 Roxy Music bass players. Sal Maida.
Sal. Yeah.
Sal is a character. Now, he tells us about his first gig that he did with Roxy in '73. I think you hired him for the Stranded tour. And he said that the first show was a disaster, but Brian said to the band after the gig that, well, at least we're still the best dressed band in the UK. But Sal mentioned this to me, and you state in the book that unlike many British bands, you guys really didn't pay your dues in the traditional manner, like doing the working man's clubs and the bar circuits. And of course, Bob Harris, you know, said you were style over substance. You know, but oddly enough, now in the world of, you know, X Factor and Britain's Got Talent and Pop Idol, the way Roxy Music did it is kind of the way it's done now in many ways. But that was kind of a hurdle you guys had to overcome.
Well, we to be fair, we did consider ourselves inspired amateurs.
Okay.
And once people, quite early on in 1972, when started, people heard Roxy, and especially when they heard the first album and they liked it and we got good reviews, we said, shit, we better do hundreds of gigs because we've got to learn our stagecraft. But to be fair, you know, Brian, Andy, and to a slightly less extent, you know, we're a lot older than me and Paul. They're like 4 or 5 years older. So yeah, they hadn't paid their dues, you know, working in clubs, but they had been to university and learned about other things. Andy did a music degree, Brian Ferry did the fine arts degree with the most famous pop art, and they brought all this extra stuff to us. And as I said, we did think we were inspired amateurs, and nearly all the songs were like 3 chords or something. But then we'd listen to the Velvet Underground, and they were all like 2 chords or 3 chords, you know, and it was about the what goes on top and the musical context. And also the you know, we are one of the, if you like, a mission statement was we want to do present interesting, different music, but in a visually attractive way.
Right.
All the dressing up was a lot of fun. It was a bit of a laugh, you know, and by coincidence, sort of what they call theatrical lighting only just came on then with Bowie.
Right. Yeah.
When we supported him in a pub in Croydon, there was these sort of poles with some theatre lightings on it. And it's incredible to believe, but no one else had like theatre lighting in those days.